Welcome to this episode of the Don Lemon Show. Over the last several weeks, the media has been hyper-focused on Epstein files and the Trump administration perhaps looming pardon of Ghislaine Maxwell and other stories. But there's a really big story that we need to discuss. There are other things, terrible things happening right now that are really flying under the radar. One of those is the destruction of science in America. RFK Jr.'s co-conspirators are gutting America's scientific community, and the ramifications will really be felt for a long, long time. So will be felt for decades, I believe. So here with me today, the authors of a fantastic, and I have to admit, frightening piece. It's in Mother Jones, and it's titled "The Plot Against Vaccines." And it's Kiera Butler's here and Anna Merlan. Thank you both for joining.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Kiera is a national correspondent at Mother Jones, and Anna is a senior reporter at Mother Jones. So you could ladies decide who you want to take this one, but I'd like to start with the person you discuss at the top of your piece, and that is, I guess it was sort of was it sort of the test case or the case that kicked this all off, and that's that's Yates Hazelhurst. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, it was one of the test cases. So the top of our piece talks about a little boy named Yates Hazelhurst, who in 2003, his family filed a lawsuit with what's called the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, basically alleging that when Yates was a toddler and received an MMR vaccine, it had caused him to develop autism. And if this sounds familiar, it's because it's a claim that folks have made for years. It's been pretty conclusively at this point disproven that vaccines can cause autism, but the Hazelhurst family and other families sued through this federal program, alleging that is what happened. And it kicked off, in the case of the Hazelhurst family, litigation that has lasted for about 22 years at this point and counting.
So, Kiera, can you talk to me about this National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, and why does the anti-vaccine universe, as you put it, hate the organization?
So this is a program that was set up in 1986 to compensate families who believe that they have had a vaccine injury happen to them. And basically the claim of the anti-vaccine advocates is that this program prevents them from being able to sue pharmaceutical companies who manufacture vaccines. Anna can say a little bit more about why it doesn't exactly work how they claim it does.
Is this is the reason, right, that the Yates Hazelhurst family was it because of this National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program that they were able to sue, or was it because of this case that the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program came about?
The National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program actually began in the 1980s in response to a series of lawsuits that were filed directly against drug manufacturers over, in this case, in the 80s, the DPT vaccine.
And the Yates Hazelhurst thing didn't happen until 2001 or 2003.
Didn't happen until 2003. Yeah. So the NBICP was founded in the 80s. Yeah.
So she said that you could talk more about why they hate. They're calling the anti-vaccine universe is calling that. They said that they hate the organization. That's what you guys say.
Right. Yeah. So the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program is a federal program. It has billions of dollars in this fund, and it is set up to compensate people who allege that they've received a vaccine injury. And the way that the court work is, it's actually pretty generous. You don't have to conclusively prove that the vaccine caused your injury. The government is quite likely to pay you if you can even sort of make your case. But the anti-vaccine movement really hates it because they would like to recreate what used to be true prior to the founding of the program, which is that people used to be able to sue drug manufacturers directly in civil court. That is what Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's now the HHS secretary, and others have said that they believe is a more fair and more just system. The thing about that is that when people were able to sue drug manufacturers directly in the 80s, it caused a crisis where pharmaceutical companies started to become more and more reluctant to make vaccines because of these gigantic personal injury suits that were being filed. So this program, the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Fund, was set up to create a system where people who could prove or even sort of prove a vaccine injury were paid fairly, and drug manufacturers were not at risk of endangering the vaccine supply. So it's a program that's worked really well for a really long time, though it is in need of updating. We could pay people more, we could pay people more quickly. There are tons of useful criticisms of the program. However, people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have made it clear that their goal is to weaken or destroy the program entirely. And now he is in a position to do that.
Yeah. Look, folks have been talking about, there's been sort of this conspiratorial nature in America, or sentiment in America of, against vaccines that didn't just start with COVID, right? And the question is, how did Americans become so anti-science? I mean, because this paranoia has been around for decades, correct? It wasn't just COVID. I remember when people were talking about vaccines, and it was, gosh, I can't remember her name, the wife or girlfriend of an actor, Wahlberg, who also, was concerned about vaccines and not necessarily spreading misinformation, but
She was
undermining, but undermining America's and people's trust in vaccines.
Yeah,
Jenny
that was
McCarthy,
Jenny
right?
McCarthy.
Yeah, Jenny McCarthy. Yeah.
Yeah, Jenny McCarthy was one of the most visible faces of another anti-vaccine organization that sold sort of unproven cures and treatments for autism to desperate families.
So where did this paranoia and this anti-science sentiment in America, where did it come from? Is it because of people spreading misinformation like that? And then, people, and then during COVID, a lot of people, again, that whole conspiracy thing came up again, and it brought it back up in the consciousness in a way that hadn't happened before. And then RFK comes around, he runs for president, and then, is now in charge of science and health in this country, and now it's back again. So where did this anti-vaccine universe come from?
I think one interesting thing to note is that the anti-vaccine movement is often associated with left-wing politics. And back in the early 2000s, even the late 90s, I would say people thought of anti-vaccine activists as living in places like Marin County, California, which were sort of, old crunchy granola enclaves where people were staunchly left-wing. And it was around 2016, at the beginning of the first Trump presidency, that you really began to see a much more mainstream rightward shift of the anti-vaccine movement. And when you think about somebody like RFK Jr., this is a guy who also started out as a Democrat, as a left-wing person, and we've seen him move progressively right. So, as the anti-vaccine movement has kind of shifted to the right, to this kind of anti-government, anti-science movement, its leader, RFK Jr., who helmed this group called Children's Health Defense, this anti-vaccine advocacy group, before he launched his run for president. He too, we've seen him shift along with the movement.
Yeah. He's the main character in your piece, so to speak, right? Can you talk to me about, he has a history of attacking vaccines and science. Can you talk to me about that more broadly? And how did he stumble into this anti-vaccine universe? Because you said he started as a Democrat, and you're right, now he's moved increasingly right, and that does happen. It seems to be sort of the trend, for lack of a better word, but he's the main character. Talk to me about how this all came about. What's his story as it relates to being so anti-vaccine?
Yeah, so Mr. Kennedy's self-described story is that he was working as an environmental attorney in around 2005 when a desperate mother came to him and begged him to look at the connection between vaccines and autism. And that's a story he's told many times to sympathetic audiences. I think Kiera and I have both seen him speak on this issue dozens of times over the last decade to anti-vaccine groups. Mr. Kennedy would insist that he is not anti-vaccine. He would say that he is pro-safe vaccine. He has a long history of undermining how safe vaccines are and the many steps we take in this country to make sure that they are safe. But basically, starting in 2005, Mr. Kennedy started suggesting a link between vaccines and autism and a link between vaccines and other serious illnesses, disorders. He's linked vaccines to everything under the sun at this point. He wrote a story that year that ran in both Rolling Stone and Salon called Deadly Immunity that was ultimately retracted because it had so many errors. And that really launched his career in the anti-vaccine movement that has really made up sort of the second part of his adult life. And as the chairman of Children's Health Defense and as an attorney helping to promote cases against vaccine manufacturers, he has gained a lot of prominence, and by all evidence, he has made a lot of money.
Yeah. And it's shocking that he is the Health and Human Services Secretary. I mean, that's the world we're living in right now. But I want to be explicitly clear, and I want to hear it from you. Is there any evidence whatsoever that vaccines cause autism?
No, and it's actually been debunked many times over, as Kiera can address too. We are starting to see Children's Health Defense trying to take aim at a lot of the safety studies that have been conducted that conclusively prove that vaccines do not cause autism, including a Danish study that came out in 2019 that was a study of 500,000 children conducted over 10 years, which proved again that vaccines do not cause autism. There is no connection. But as you say, we are now in a position where the Health and Human Services Secretary has made it clear that he does believe that to be the case. And the concern from the public health experts that we spoke to is that he will use this very powerful position to make this claim, make this case, and change public health policy as a result.
Kiera?
And of course, he's reopened this question that, as Anna said, has been, answered many, many times over. No, vaccines don't cause autism, but that has not stopped him from calling for this question to be reinvestigated. And I guess I would like to point out at taxpayer expense, this is going to be a federal project re-examining this disproven link between vaccines and autism.
Support comes from Mint Mobile. Let's be real. Summer should be about cookouts, should be about beach days, swimming, unplugging, not stressing over another outrageous wireless bill. So that's why so many people, including some of my own team, they're switching to Mint Mobile. With Mint, you get the same premium wireless service that you're used to. Same coverage, same speed, but for way less money. And right now, they're offering 3 months of unlimited service. 3 months of unlimited service for just $15 a month. All Mint Mobile plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network. And you can keep your phone, you can keep your number, and all of your contact. So my team's been using Mint, and they'll tell you that the quality is just as good as the big carriers. Crystal clear, reliable, and tons of data. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank and get this new customer offer and your 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/downlimit. That's mintmobile.com/downlimit. Now, I need to tell you, upfront payment of $45 is required. It's the equivalent of $15 a month. It's limited time, new customer offer for 3 months only. Speeds may slow at 35 GB on unlimited plan, and taxes and fees are extra. So check with Mint Mobile for details. Support comes from Delete Me. Your personal information is being bought and sold online every single day. Your phone number, your home address, even family details, and that puts you at risk for scams, spam, even identity theft. Delete Me makes it fast and easy to take back control. They scan and remove your personal data from people, search sites, and data brokers all year long. And look, as someone with a public profile, I know how important privacy is. I've seen friends get doxxed. I've been doxxed. I've seen people get harassed, impersonated. It's not just annoying, it can be dangerous. So Delete Me gives you peace of mind. Right now, you can get 20% off just for being a listener. So text Don to 64000 to get started. That's Don to 64000 for 20% off of your Delete Me plan. Message and data rates may apply. Can you guys discuss with me about what miasma theory is? Can you explain that?
Sure. So this is an ancient theory that there's sort of something in the air that causes infectious disease. That people get sick because of unhealthy air around them, because of pollution, because of poor sanitation. And of course, there's some truth to this, right? We do know that poor sanitation does promote the spread of infectious disease. The way that RFK Jr. thinks about this is he believes that healthy people who are otherwise healthy, whose bodies are sort of constitutionally sound, can't actually get sick with infectious diseases. So your viewers probably are familiar with the recent measles outbreak. He's made statements along the lines of, otherwise healthy children can't get severely ill or die from measles. This has been disproven time and again. There have been in this very outbreak kids who have been otherwise healthy who have died of measles. But RFK Jr. continues to attribute attribute this to them having, unsound bodies. I think the other thing that's important here is to make the connection between this and his crusade against chemicals, basically against additives in food, against food dyes. All of this he considers to be contributing to this chronic disease epidemic that's making people, and children in particular, less healthy and more susceptible to disease. The miasma theory has been debunked. Anybody who has caught a cold from their kid knows that germ theory is real, and yet RFK Jr. continues to insist on promoting this ancient discredited theory.
In the article, you guys note how RFK Jr.'s his most shocking move to date was effectively, and I quote here, an administrative coup at the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee. What do you mean? Talk to me about that.
Well, essentially, as Kiera wrote about, ACIP, the Vaccine Advisory Committee, that is a central advisory committee to the CDC about the vaccine schedule in this country, RFK fired all 17 of its members and replaced them with, in many cases, people with demonstrable links to the anti-vaccine movement. The thing that we should note about this is when Kiera and I began reporting this piece, talking to public health experts, people would say to us, well, RFK has done a lot of things that concern us, but at least he hasn't touched ACIP. At least he hasn't thrown out those experts. And then, of course, in the process of reporting that piece, that's precisely what he did. So the concern with these folks, and Kiera can speak to this more broadly, is essentially that they will make recommendations to the CDC and to HHS that are not rooted in good science, that are rooted in fear-mongering, that are rooted in debunked ideas about how vaccines work or do not work. And we have seen a good deal of evidence that that is precisely what's going to happen.
Yeah. Kiera?
Yeah, so more specifically on that committee, there is Vicki Pebsworth, who's a nurse who's served on the board of the anti-vaccine group, National Vaccine Information Center, Martin Kulldorff, who was a dismissed Harvard University researcher and opposed COVID lockdowns. Dr. Robert Malone, he says that he invented mRNA vaccines, and he now questions their safety. These are folks who have a history of anti-vaccine activism, who are now making the decisions about what recommendations to make to the CDC about vaccine policy.
How does this going to, and everyone who's watching and who's going to hear this, listen to it, see it, they're going to wonder, well, how is this going to affect my life? How is this affecting Americans' lives more broadly, these anti-vaccine moves?
So one of the concerns specifically with the recommendations that are made to the CDC is if, for instance, a flu shot or a COVID shot is no longer recommended to be on the childhood vaccine schedule or the adult vaccine schedule, it could no longer be covered by insurance. There could also be a situation where, as happened in the 1980s, drug manufacturers are more reluctant to make vaccines if they're not covered by the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, which was very carefully set up as a legal framework. So we kind of make the case in this piece that from both the kind of supply side and the demand side, from both folks trying to get their yearly vaccines, their COVID shots, their flu shots, and the companies who make these vaccines, they could get harder to access. And like a lot of things in this country happening under the Trump administration and the so-called MAHA movement, it is going to largely depend on how much money you have, how able you are to pay for these things out of pocket. There may be a situation where folks have to engage in, frankly, medical tourism to go get shots elsewhere that become less available in this country. And so, the public health experts we've spoken to are really, really, really concerned. We've worked really hard in this country to ensure a degree of safety against communicable diseases, not just stuff like COVID, but stuff like the flu, which used to kill, the 1918 flu pandemic killed millions of people. And so, the concern is it could become harder for ordinary folks to access vaccines and other routine medical care.
But there's always people want a call to action because they're like, well, he's the HHS secretary. And so he really has all the power. And they're wondering, what can they do, in their own lives, in their own communities? What can they do to help combat this? Do they have any power? What should they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing is that a lot of the public health experts we've spoken to, who are not political advocates or not people who get involved in politics generally, have said that they think that Kennedy should be removed as HHS secretary. I think it's very unlikely, but that is, I would say more and more of the folks that we talk to are saying that. The other thing too is if you are currently not up to date on any of your shots and you want to talk to your doctor about that, this is the time to do that,
Yeah.
I think the other thing that occurs to me is just looking at this most recent measles outbreak. Measles is a disease that it requires, I think it's around 95% vaccine coverage in order to prevent transmission. And so once the vaccination rates that dip a little bit, even 1% in a year can make a huge difference in terms of the spread of measles. And people tend to think, I got vaccinated, I'm good. I don't have to worry about measles, but there are certain cases where there's a low number of people who will still get measles even if they're vaccinated. And in order to prevent that from happening, we need to achieve what's called herd immunity. People need to maintain this level of vaccination so that we can prevent this disease from spreading.
Yeah. And it's really just because it is so contagious. Again, the public health experts we talk to are incredibly concerned about measles specifically, which was basically eradicated in this country for a long time. It was incredibly rare to have the kind of outbreak we're seeing now, which is extremely serious.
Well, then I don't want to be hyperbolic or inflammatory, but is it fair to say that RFK Jr.'s moves can possibly kill people or are killing people?
I mean, it is certainly creating an environment where people are less safe. It is also worth pointing out that the organization he headed, Children's Health Defense, has downplayed the severity of measles specifically for a very, very long time. And RFK personally has done that. So again, if you have somebody like RFK or another person linked to the anti-vaccine movement telling you, not to vaccinate your child against measles, I would really, really urge you to talk to your pediatrician about that and hear about what the impact of that could be, because they are incredibly serious and they are very, very sad.
Yeah. So the piece is called "The Plot Against Vaccines." It is a fascinating read. It is in Mother Jones. I would encourage you to read it. It is so much great information in there, and you'll learn all about what's happening with vaccines and the anti-vaccine movement and RFK Jr.'s plans, et cetera. Kiera Butler is a national correspondent at Mother Jones, and Anna Merlan is a senior reporter at Mother Jones. Thank you both for joining.
Thanks for having
us.
Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.